Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and you know how January is known for bad movies? Well, the same applies here, because this week I'm looking at Zanki Zero, Last Beginning, released by Spike Chunsoft in April of 2019. Written and directed by Takayuki Sugawara, the game was seen by many to be Spike Chunsoft's attempt to create their next big franchise after wrapping up their two most popular ones in the span of a year, even though the game's concept was around well before then. And, well, it wasn't exactly a success. It's a mix of visual novel, dungeon crawler, puzzle, and survival games, and that should tell you right away that this game has way too much going on. With all these cooks in the kitchen, some products were bound to be burnt, with others left undeniably undercooked. Let's see which is which, and while we're at it, sift through a needlessly complicated plot whilst giving it everything we've got. The game opens with a pretty cool moment where the title screen seamlessly leads into gameplay, but it's immediately ruined because oh my god, these controls are awful. All movement is on a grid, and you can move independently of the camera, which is nice at times, but also makes it really annoying every time you have to turn the camera to see where you're going. A weird ghosty girl leads our unknown POV to an old arcade machine to select the difficulty. Usually I don't bring up difficulty selection stuff, but this is the only game I've seen that actually recommends you play on the hardest available difficulty. A 4th and 5th level are added later though, for you masochists out there that want a bullshit game to be even more bullshit. So you choose your difficulty and then immediately see a random man commit suicide by jumping off the top of a building.
Buddy! Shit just went from 0 to 100 real fucking quick. Oh.
Forgive me if the next few minutes feel a bit all over the place, but this game jumps from one thing to the next in an effort to get all the exposition over as fast as possible, and it's done in the completely wrong order. Like, the characters' names are one of the last things you learn. But here, that's where we're starting. Let's illuminate these humans. The Officer of Pride, who I'm 99% sure was based on the character designs for these two, with the worst defined sin in the game, all about sins, and really, how do you fuck that up? Eeny, meeny, minamo seta uchi! The Doctor of Greed, constantly obsessing over how tight his muscles are, really making you wonder why he isn't the Pride representative, and also the only video game character I've ever shared a birthday with, so of course he's the worst character in the game! Mamoru Ichio! The Florist of Lust and de facto main love interest because I said so, and if you ask me to pick which character represented lust on looks alone, she's definitely the last one I'd pick, which makes it work even more. Riko Suzukino! The Artist of Envy, who calls himself a bondage artist, which is an art form I am never going near, and honestly anyone who proudly calls themselves that should be kept on a tight leash. Ryo Mikajime! The Heiress of Gluttony, whose entire character for majority of the game is I'm rich and I like food, and if you ask me to pick which character represented gluttony on looks alone, she's definitely the first one I'd pick. Yuma Mashiro! The Farmer of Wrath, who definitely grew many grapes like him, and the stereotypical bad guy that all the good girls like for reasons I don't understand, and I've honestly had this question for a real long time, though I do like this guy a lot. Zen Kubota! The Editor of Sloth and de facto main character, and the fact that he's only guilty of one sin is a miracle considering he worked in the news industry, Haruto Higurashi! And the Girl of Original Sin with half prosthetic limbs, which I'm sure aren't connected to her title that must have cost an arm and a leg to install, Sachika Hirasaka! Much like how Persona uses Arcana, Zanki Zero uses the 7 deadly sins as a baseline for each character's personality and backstory, which will be elaborated on further in occasionally graphic detail. Haruto awakens on an island where he's greeted by Sachika, who welcomes him to Garage Island, named after the only relevant building on this whole island. Haruto also makes a comment on how the only sound he can hear is something that sounds like a ship, and wouldn't it be really fucking stupid if they were actually on a boat this whole time? Well, just in case, I'll have T-Pain on speed dial. Haruto enters the famous Garage Island garage where he meets everyone else before a show comes on the TV that isn't plugged in. Gather round, children, it's time for the next exciting episode of Extended TV with your hosts, Sho Terashima and Mirai. Mirai being Japanese for future, and for those wondering, Zanki is Japanese for residue, but the official title translation is Remaining Lives Zero Last Beginning, because, you know, English. Anyway, Sho and Mirai engage in what I believe is supposed to be comedy, and they instruct the final 8 members of humanity to build a toilet.
Illuminate!
A brighter future!
For humanity!
What? Was there a massive plot point in the middle of that sentence? Well, that's what the opening feels like. Massive important details being randomly shoved in amongst other random crap. But yes, Sho and Mirai tell our garage band of 8 that they are the last humans on Earth, and they are there to help them survive. Also, their survival is somehow tied into their X keys, strange D-pad looking metal X's forged to their stomachs. Mamoru suggests that this is all just some TV show, and wouldn't that just be a fucking stupid plot twist to have in your game? While Haruto goes around and gets introduced to everyone else, he's told about all the bullshit mechanics you'll come to hate, namely the hunger, bladder, burden, and stress mechanics. As you'd expect, hunger goes down until you eat something, and bladder goes up over time. Burden is in regards to how much someone has in their inventory, as they'll be unable to move if it's too full. All of that relates to the stress meter, because it's like managing your own stress while playing this wasn't enough.
A stress meter!
And these characters are all on the verge of a full mental breakdown because every little thing stresses them the fuck out. They get too hungry, they eat food they don't like, they use a bottle to pee in, they use a dirty toilet to pee in, they're carrying too much, they walk too much, they bite too much, everything! And yes, every character has food preferences that impact how much health and hunger they recover. Each character has their own inventory and a different weight limit, and their inventories will be used to stash items you find scattered around or drops from enemies you'll come across, which is where we're introduced to the garbage heap of bad ideas this game calls a combat system. Each person in your party of 4 can hold a weapon and equip armor like this was the Japanese translation of Minecraft. In order to attack, you can either press a button for a light attack or hold it for a charged attack. The longer you hold it, the more characters get charged and the more damage you do. On top of that, there's also a cooldown, so have fun shambling your way around enemies as you try to deal with their unpredictable movement patterns and wait for your characters to cool down so you can land one attack and then run for the hills and then repeat the process a couple thousand times until the credits roll. Oh, did you think we were done? Nope, there's still like 4 more mechanics to go over, though a couple of them will have to wait until later. Each character has an individual skill book where you can upgrade their ability to do certain things using skill points gained through leveling up. Each character has at least one skill unique to them, and the others control things like how much damage they do, the quality of food they can cook, the quality of building they can do, and a billion other things. And the ones that don't relate to combat relate to base expansion. Occasionally required, but mostly optional, base expansion is exactly what it sounds like. Using the materials you gather, you will be able to create and improve 5 different areas of the island. The warehouse lets you store items, the workshop lets you craft weapons and tools, the bedrooms will recover health and eventually allow 2 characters to sleep together to increase their bond, the kitchen lets you cook food, and the toilet depletes bladder but raises stress until it's leveled up to a certain point. Speaking of the toilet, they build it and their next objective is to fucking die! Oh, sorry, did I skip a step there? Sho and Mirai tell the Garage Patch Kids that they are clones of their original bodies and that all of their data is stored in their X keys, so when one of them dies, they can be revived as long as the X key is intact. Obviously, none of them trust that, and no one wants to test it, so they go to sleep for the night, waking up the next morning to see that a new island has appeared out of nowhere, containing the ruins of Mashiro Garden Tower, the building that Haruto jumped off in the beginning. They make their way inside and realize that they all used to live in the same city before Rinko almost has a full fucking breakdown because she's the only one focusing on who is behind all this. Though, in my opinion, she should be more focused on what's behind all of her.
We meet again, Haruto.
This game just does not stop. So them being clones is the truth, and they are revived when their X keys are placed into that arcade machine in the garage, which is known as an extend machine. However, they are revived as a child, for some reason, and that's how death works in this game. If a member of your party dies for whatever reason, you have to revive them in the extend machine for a certain amount of score points, which you gain by killing things. Also, reviving a deceased party member will give them a Shigabane, basically making it harder for them to die that way again. By reviving Haruto and Rinko, they have completed their mission, and the reward is another mission. This time it's to retrieve a missing piece of the extend machine hidden somewhere inside Mashiro Garden Tower. And that brings us, finally, out of the prologue and into Stage 1. That was the end of Solomon Grundy. See what I mean about this game just having way too much going on? All of that is explained in the prologue, and that's not even all of the core mechanics yet. Now that Haruto and Rinko are stupid, useless baby children, they're a lot less useful. They can't do nearly as much damage, nor can they carry nearly as much. Thankfully, those who aren't in your active party can carry stuff well over their weight limit at no cost. Sounds simple enough, right? Keep adults in your party, and when someone dies, put them in your sub-party. Quick quick and painless. Psych, there's more. Clones age a lot faster than regular humans, to the point that their lifespan is only 13 days. To represent this, every character has 4 stages that they go through: child, adult, middle-aged, and senior. Adult and middle-aged are the best for combat, while child and senior are just fucking useless. So as if there wasn't enough shit for you to waste your time with, you have to plan everything according to everyone's individual 13-day cycles. My strategy was to utilize the fact that Sachika's X key is different than everyone else's. When she revives, she's the same age she was before, and she doesn't age. But how does the game pass days? Is it every time the characters return to the island to sleep? No, idiot! That would make too much sense and make this game more fun. Instead, the characters age every time you switch floors in a dungeon. As you may have been able to predict, every chapter is going to focus on a different location tied to one of the characters, with the team having to explore the place and all its floors. Every time you go up or down a floor, a day will pass, which is as fucking bullshit as it sounds. It actively discourages exploration despite the other aspects of the game demanding it. Anyway, their exploration is interrupted by Extend TV, and in this episode, Sho finds a hidden VHS tape called Sloth 1 My First, which shows Haruto starting his job at the newspaper and being given the green light to write a story about impoverished young women. These are called conquest videos and serve to reveal to the audience how exactly these characters represent one of the 7 deadly sins. These conquest videos are by far the best part of the game. As we'll see later, some are better than others as some flat out make no sense, but most of them are good and get really dark, so this is your content warning. Sloth Conquest Video 2 is called With a Woman Who Was a Housewife and shows Haruto interviewing a young and single mother, promising not to show her face in the article so her husband won't recognize her. His boss doesn't approve of this for reasons, but reluctantly accepts. Progressing onward, they come across a humanoid with a tentacle arm, which is a real introduction to targeting. On top of charging up attacks, you'll be able to target specific points on certain enemies to weaken them. Then they are shown Sloth Conquest Video 3, The Blindfolded Woman. This one reveals that Haruto's boss exchanged the neck-down photo Haruto used with one that showed her face, save for censored eyes. His boss then gets a call saying that the woman's ex-husband recognized her and tracked her down, where she supposedly attacked him with a knife, leading to him killing her in self-defense. And of course, they find out soon afterward that it was Haruto's boss that switched the photo out, and yeah, this is one of the weaker sin stories. The woman's death was by no means his fault, and he shouldn't be blamed for his boss going back on his word and the freelance photographer not upholding the promise he was there to hear. Honestly, a lot of them have that problem. It's less about the characters themselves being guilty of their sin and more about their lives being impacted by others around them who were guilty of it. So while the conquest videos don't fit with the 7 deadly sins angle, they are still the best part of this game. The extend machine part is being guarded by a boss who ends up being, of course, Haruto's boss. It's a standard easy first boss, and they get a weird egg thing and the machine part. The hope is that finding all of the parts will allow them to live more than 13 days so that they can create non-clone children to repopulate the world. They have a party to celebrate where Zen talks to Haruto about his thought that the mastermind behind their situation is hidden within their ranks, and this conversation serves as our segue into Stage 2. I am a monkey! To go with the theme of every chapter focusing on a different character, the perspective will also change. So now we're seeing things from Zen's perspective. Zen's revelation to the group that Garage Island is a part of Mashiro City is interrupted by Extend TV, which announces that the next island has drifted up, this one being Monkey Treehouse Village, and like, that's not how islands work. They begin to explore one of the worst dungeons in the game and are presented with one of the best sin stories in the game with the conquest video Wrath Part 1, Moving to the Country. This is also one of the most fucked up ones, so you've been warned. It's all sunshine and rainbows for now though, as this one just shows Zen, his parents, and his older brother moving in with his grandparents on their farm. What a loving family. Not wanting strangers gawking at his past, Zen decides to go it alone, so he's the only one who gets to see Wrath Conquest Video Part 2, The Treehouse and the Room of Secrets, which sounds like a Harry Potter book. In this one, Zen goes to see his mother, who went to collect a package from his grandfather. He sees what he believes to be monkeys, but it's actually his mother fucking his grandfather, and he hears that his grandfather is actually his father. Well, that got dark real fast. Oh, and Zen isn't the only one who sees the tape either, as it broadcasts to every TV, and it's not long after that the rest of the group reunite with him. Reunited and feeling so good, they ascend to the treehouse proper to watch Wrath Conquest Video Part 3, Funeral. Oh boy. Something tells me this video won't be putting the fun in that word, and my assessment was correct, as this one details the funeral of Zen's grandmother, or the woman he thought was his grandmother, but is actually his stepmother, I guess? Zen has this crisis with every member of his family and begins to see them as a monkeys just pretending to be a family. I'm just glad Sho and Mirai are treating this moment with the respect it deserves.
Illuminate!
A brighter future.
For Beyonce!
Before we continue, I want to go over the differences between this dungeon and the last one beyond the aesthetic. This treehouse is filled with a lot more annoying puzzles and traps on top of way more annoying and powerful enemies that can easily catch you off guard or trap you in a corner if you aren't careful, which is great when the majority of this place is straight and narrow hallways. But enough about that, it's time to get back to the trauma of Zen's past with Wrath Conquest Video Part 4. The Raging Forest. This one shows that Zen began using his mother as an outlet for his anger, beating her almost every day for the next 2 years, and his dissociation has gone so far that he begins to question if he's human since he's the son of a monkey. Before we get to the thrilling 5th installment in this saga, I want to bring up one of my biggest nitpicks with this game, the cutscenes. See, throughout the dungeons there will be pauses for the characters to discuss what's going on. However, characters who are currently dead will still participate in them. Much like the 7 Deadly Sins thing not fully fitting with every character, death is such an integral concept and mechanic in the game that isn't done justice. If they're dead, their contribution should be cut. Yes, it means they'd have to plan versions of every cutscene with characters missing, but that's what you get when you introduce 2 completely conflicting ideas. Speaking of conflict, it's time for Wrath Conquest Video Part 5, Welcome the Newlyweds. It may feel like I'm jumping from one to the next at blinding speed, but not much of anything happens in between them. They're just moving throughout the dungeon and killing enemies. But who needs enemies when you can make new allies? And that's what happens in Part 5 as Zen's brother-nephew moves back in with his wife Rumiko, who finds out about the twisted family dynamic, though promises to be Zen's big sister anyway. Aw, isn't that sweet? I sure hope nothing bad happens to her in Wrath Conquest Video Part 6, A Fluttering Heart and Foreboding. This one reveals that she helped Zen get into college for agriculture, and then Zen finds out that she went off in his mother's stead to retrieve a package from his grandfather, and he obviously has bad memories of that. And let's see if history repeats itself in the Season 2 finale, Wrath Conquest Video Part 7, The Monkey Trainer Monkey. The answer is yes, obviously. This time, Zen confronts them and his grandfather reveals that his mother and Rumiko came to him to pay their debts, and in return, he forced them to marry his children so that they were always in his reach whenever he wanted to have his way with them. Zen, understandably upset, goes to attack him, but Rumiko gets in the way. In order to protect his harassment harem, his grandfather spins the story and says that Zen tried to force himself on Rumiko, injuring her in the process. Zen doesn't care about his shame of a family, enough to tell them the truth, and leaves them to go to college, but not before meeting up with Rumiko one last time and calling her big sister like she always wanted. What a sweet moment, I hope it lasts.
The true culprit that caused the heat in her loins, Zen Kubota! You are the blackened!
Or they can ruin it by saying random shit that makes no sense. That works too. See what I mean about some sin stories being leagues ahead of other ones? In this one, Zen is clearly guilty of wrath. He bottled up his anger and only knew how to take it out through violence, which was largely against the few people who cared about him. However, he's not the bad guy in the situation. You understand why he's so mad and why he feels like his family is one big lie. I hated Zen before this, but afterwards he became one of my favorites. He still doesn't regret his decision, and it's not hard to see why. He doesn't beg for forgiveness or try to pretend it never happened. He owns it, and it's up to you how you take it. And it's no surprise that the boss ends up being Zen's grandfather, and this boss fight is painfully easy thanks to the large space you're given and how slow the boss moves. Zen finally accomplishes what he wanted to do for so long and is given 2 more weird egg things for his efforts and the next extend machine button. Back on the island, he has a nice moment with Yuma where he realizes that he distrusted her because she reminds him of Rumiko. He also realizes that he can't remember anything from before he moved to the farm. Minamo overhears this and realizes she isn't the only one, and that transitions us into Stage 3, and vowed he steal no more. If you can't tell by now, each chapter is named after a different nursery rhyme. Stage 1 was Solomon and Grundy, Stage 2 was I Am a Gold Lock, and Stage 3 is the Queen of Hearts. And this time we're playing as everyone's favorite post-apocalyptic cop. No, not him. Season 3 of Extended TV debuts with an all-new episode about Cleone, the official name of those weird egg things they've collected. Those are the parasites that take the form of tentacles on certain enemies and can be transplanted into the main characters to make them stronger. Someone has to get a Cleone transplant in order to access Masha Mashiro Metro Plaza, located under Mashiro Garden Tower, and Minamo decides to be the guinea pig, believing the next area to be for her. In the process, she accidentally drops her notebook into the extend machine and it disappears. I hope you got an extended warranty. And we get to see why I never ever gave anyone Cleone after this, because it's just fucking disgusting. Yeah, it probably put me at a severe disadvantage and made the game much harder, but I preserved my lunch in the process, so it was worth it. Cleone is much like Aigis' Orgia mode from Persona 3. Very powerful, but has to be used sparingly and effectively, otherwise you'll pay the price, which is most often death. Cleone quite literally in hand, they are able to access the underground mall, which is easily the creepiest area in the game. It's basically the complete inverse of the Monkey Treehouse village, a very interesting area with a crap story behind it. And the origin of Feces starts with Pride Conquest Video Part 1, a father, a sister, and a brother. This family dynamic is a lot better than Zen's though, with Minamo's father and younger brother being proud of her work as a cop, though her father warning her that her pride in her job will make her enemies, and he doesn't want her to end up like her mother. Can you tell we're already off to a bad start? They explore the maze-like mall with all its dark and creepy mall halls and dark and creepy mall hall statues until they find Pride Conquest Video Part 2, Minamo and the Watch Thief. This is a pretty short one that just tells us that Minamo's brother stole a watch in the very store she happened to be in. Of all the watch joints in all the malls in all the world, he walks into hers. And we walk down the subway, which is even darker because that's what we needed, but luckily Sho and Mirai illuminate a brighter future for us by casting a light on Minamo's past with Pride Conquest Video Part 3, just the two of us in a locked room. This is also a short one that shows Minamo's brother confessing that he was ordered to steal the watch on behalf of a bully. So we're 3 parts in, and so far Minamo has done nothing but her job. Maybe something will happen in Pride Conquest Video Part 4, care and be cared for, sell and be sold. Yeah, nope, this one shows that her brother sold her out to the bullies and they're about to jump her. There's only one part left and she still has done nothing remotely wrong here. Before we go over that and wrap things up here, I want to comment on this place's layout. It's essentially a giant maze where you go between the mall itself and the subway to access different areas and unlock doors that allow you to access even more new areas or circle back to places you've already been. It's a lot more fun than the puzzle hellscape of the treehouse and more interesting than the tower, though the amount of enemies that jump out of the darkness to attack you does get annoying. This section also has 2 of my least favorite enemies in the form of Bird and Mannequin with Foot, both of which hit like trucks, and it's about time we drive up to Pride Conquest Video Part 5, Unfair. In this one, Minamo just gets beaten by the bullies and hospitalized. That's it. I wasn't exaggerating earlier. With the worst defining sin in the game, all about sins, and really, how do you f*** that up? Minamo didn't do a single thing wrong. She just did her job. She didn't even take pride in her job to an extreme degree. She just liked helping people. How is she guilty of a sin for being beaten after arresting someone extorting a minor? That's like if a woman was abusing her husband and he was the one who paid the consequences. This time around, the boss is Minamo's brother, and this boss fight has the same quality as the Conquest videos that led up to him. Points for consistency? He has annoying splash poison attacks, and the room is filled with traps that are great to use against him but easily used against you. Minamo's reward is her notebook somehow, and a tentacle demon that just watched the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 trailer. My reality. I bet you can't guess what a future stage may be called. Anyway, he beats the fuck out of all of them and then stabs the fuck out of Sachika, prompting flashes of a similar event, except the tubular tentacle demon is replaced with someone who looks vaguely familiar. But it can't be him. Sachika calls the creature Kurosuke. When they return to the garage, they all admit to having seen the same vision and not having memories of their childhood. We are then told that there were actually only 7 of them when they were friends as children, and then we cut to Yuma as she says she's going to end all of this. Hello, giant red fish, how are you doing? Obvious diversions aside, this is the setup for Stage 4, Buried Under the Cold Marble Stones. This, I believe, is based on the Juniper Tree by the Brothers Grimm, though it's appeared in many different forms and it's always just as f***ed. The new machine part unlocks an arcade game called Reckless Skies, and is one of those stupid side-scrolling shooters where having 0 lives counts as having 1 life left, which I never understood. And you may be wondering how that helps them restore humanity. It doesn't! Though it does unlock a childhood memory, all of them remembering being a group of friends called the Garage Kids. I'm pretty sure this is the 3rd time they've remembered being childhood friends, and the 2nd time someone remembers that there are only 7 members as opposed to the 8 on the island. Speaking of islands, the next one has pulled into port, and it's the ritzy Belle et Moi cruise ship, and the fear of having her past exposed isn't going to stop Yuma from destroying anything related to cloning. Wait a minute. Yo, T-Pain, it's time! The second they step inside the crumbling cruiser, they are presented with Gluttony Conquest Video Part 1, the arrogant, autocratic, and absolute reigning ruler. The video tells the story of Yuma's father, Renji Mashiro, the CEO of Mashiro Group, belittling and firing a chef for leaving his wife and Yuma's mother's favorite meal off the menu, followed by Yuma saying her father is in the wrong and her mother telling her that people in powerful positions can never be wrong and to obey and support her father no matter what. I'm going to warn you now that this is a pretty messed up one, so progress with caution. Whether you want to proceed with caution in regards to the conquest videos or not, you should definitely proceed with caution on the Belle et Moi. It's filled with traps, puzzles, powerful enemies, and as many long dark hallways as there are big dark rooms. Odds are you will get jumped by at least 2 enemies in this area. Your reward for being cautious is Gluttony Conquest Video Part 2, Pygmalion. The story of Pygmalion centering on a sculptor who fell in love with a statue of his own creation.
I don't like where this is going.
This one shows Renji taking his wife's death very hard and Yuma promising to support him in her stead, thus giving him the drive to conquer death itself, which always goes well. Let's see where Gluttony Conquest Video Part 3, The Forbidden Fruit, takes us.
No.
This one shows Renji and Yuma in bed together because it went exactly where you thought.
FBI should be knocking on this door any minute now.
And Renji mentions that Mashiro Group is about to become the pioneer of human cloning. Yuma objects to this but is subdued when Renji calls her his doll, and she agrees that she is nothing more than a doll shaped after her mother. But before things can get even more fucked up, the garage kids are interrupted by the Baba Black Sheep Kurosuke, and we get to really see how disgustingly creepy he is. And since he floats like a butterfly and stings like a gunshot, the only option is to run away from him. However, Yuma leads them to a dead end. Remember the whole destroying anyone and anything related to cloning thing? Obviously it fails since we still have like 3.5 sins to go. So let's get back on track with Gluttony Conquest Video Part 4, 20180621. So either it's about the year 20,180,621 AD or June 21st, 2018. Well, we get our answer immediately because this one is just security cam footage. Renji talks about bringing his wife back to life with something named Luciora, while another scientist says he should wait until he finalizes his research. They successfully revive Moi, and by successfully revive, I mean turn her into a tentacle creature. The other scientist, Terashima, knew this would happen, while Renji is traumatized and promises to abandon and destroy all his cloning research. And if the name Terashima sounds familiar, that's because it's also Sho's last name. The Terashima in this video also says, "Let's illuminate a brighter future for humanity," because the hints for this plot twist are as subtle as a brick to the face. They cross through trials and risk their lives just for this one moment to arrive. Gluttony Conquest Video Part 5, Mashiro's Successor Doll. In this season finale, Renji gets assassinated and makes Yuma promise to destroy all of Mashiro Group's cloning research along with MANI, the Mashiro Nanotechnology Institute. Modern day Yuma has the resolve to finally be her own person and not her father's doll, and with that we're free to face the boss, a nightmare fusion of both of Yuma's parents, in what is easily the cheesiest boss fight so far, in that it's ridiculous how easy it is to cheese this fight. They retrieve the next extend machine part along with documents detailing that the creatures we've seen have their actions defined by whatever host memory is most prominent. So, for example, the reason Haruto's boss kept repeating the line from the phone is because the memory of that phone call was the most prominent memory it had. This ties into a document they found earlier about the waste created from cloning, but there's another revelation about the creatures and all the monsters they've been fighting that complicates this further. So, for now, we head into Stage 5. And here we go, roundy. We are now past the halfway point, and all of the best parts of the game are behind us. While Haruto and Minamo's stories left a lot to be desired, at least they were associated with fun areas to explore. Zen's story is by far the best, yet it was in a crappy area, and Yuma's was a good mix of both. A solid story and a fun location. However, from this point on, you'll be lucky if even one of those aspects is above average. By process of elimination, we have Rinko, Mamoru, Sachika, and Ryo left to go, the latter of which being our focus now. The next button unlocks the Sill Burst ability. This allows characters on their last day of their lives to have more powerful Cleone attacks in exchange for death. With only 2 buttons left to find, the garage kids head to the next ruins, the Kuromo Hot Springs, where they're told the machine part is being guarded by a giant crocodile. I'm sure we'll see him in a while. Before they do that though, Ryo tells everyone his traumatic backstory, saving me the trouble of sifting through all the conquest videos. His father died when he was young and he and his mother moved into the hot springs where his mom met another man. However, she soon started to neglect Ryo and eventually killed herself, forcing him into an orphanage. Good times were had by all. Kuromo Hot Springs isn't the worst area in the game, but it still sucks massive conky dong thanks to the elements of randomization. Every time you enter the dungeon, you start in one of a set of locations, depending on the current. It can be a really helpful shortcut, or a very time-consuming detour. But at least this is the nicest looking area we've been in. Oh yeah, I was just kidding, I still have to go over the conquest videos. Well, you thought a little kid was going to be able to accurately recall just how messed up his home life was? Good thing we have Envy Conquest Video Part 1 together with Mom to fill in the gaps. Ryo almost gets hit by a car while out with his mom and the guy cheating on his wife with her, and his solution is to put Ryo in a harness instead of, you know, holding his hand. Ryo instantly likes being tied to the rope, and his mother even uses it to keep him in check when she goes out. However, Ryo's father dies and his mom breaks down, saying she only had and took care of Ryo because he wanted her to. How come Haruto's is the only one that didn't revolve around family so far? Envy Conquest Video Part 2, The Soft Cage, is when things get bad. Ryo's mom has moved on to someone else, and Ryo reveals that the reason he likes being tied up is because it's the only thing that makes him feel attached to his mother. Then the guy Ryo's mom was talking to runs away and gets married to someone else, and an older woman looking out for Ryo's safety calls Child Protective Services on her, making her question why everyone only cares about Ryo while she suffers. Then she binds him with a rope so that he can't do anything he wants.
And besides, that sort of woman is...
Okay, let's end that right here. Moving on to the next topic.
Don't worry, Sho, I know just how to finish your sentence.
And besides, that sort of woman is...
100% butt fucking sane.
And when they're done dealing with tap dancing crab demons, they find Envy Conquest Video Part 3. Let's go to the hot springs. An enticing proposal in most any other context. This is actually a much tamer one in comparison to what he just saw, as it shows Ryo's mom getting a job at the hot springs and the manager being nice to the two of them. I'm sure things will remain fun in Envy Conquest Video Part 4, Steamy Love. Sounds like the name of the wrong kind of sin video. This one shows Ryo's mom bragging to Ryo that the manager is spending more time with her and only being nice to Ryo out of courtesy, before showing Ryo being approached by the manager while he's playing arcade games and giving him extra money to play with and getting a bit too close. Then the mom gets upset that he's spending more time with Ryo and ties him up again. I'm starting to think I may have used that FBI clip too early. Let's see if my instincts are validated in the final episode of Season 5. Envy Conquest Video Part 5, Bad End. The manager is planning to adopt Ryo as his own after forcing his mom to leave him, saying that she's abusing him. She figures out that he's a pervert only after Ryo, and instead of being a good parent, she instead gets jealous that Ryo is always getting the attention, so she tries to strangle him.
Officer, right there.
Come on in, fella!
She stops and runs off before she can finish, and the next thing we hear is that Ryo's mom stabbed the manager to death and then hung herself. Also, it's implied that the rope Ryo wears around his neck is the one his mother hung herself with. Yikes. Though I don't know how the fuck any of that makes Ryo guilty of envy. He was the subject of someone else's envy through no fault of his own. We've done 5 of these things already, and only 2 of them have been guilty of the sin that's attached to them. The boss this time around isn't just a giant crocodile like they were told, it's multiple giant crocodiles, in easily the simplest boss fight yet. Despite the fact that they shouldn't be rewarded for completing such an easy fight, they obtain the next machine part and see a weird clone of Ryo emerge from the extend machine. This is enough to confirm Yuma's theory that all of the creatures they have come across in the dungeons are the waste product created every time one of them is cloned, along with the fact that Extend TV lied to them. The bosses they've encountered aren't Cleone corrupted people from their past, they're failed clones who came to be defined by the strong memories associated with the original. For example, they didn't actually fight Haruto's boss earlier, they fought waste created by Haruto cloning himself that was defined by Haruto's memory of that tragic event. They're also able to figure out that all of the extend machines are connected, as proven by Minamo losing her notebook in the machine on Garage Island and finding it near one underground. Finally, Mamoru fucking flips his shit when Ryo says the past doesn't matter and that the here and now is more important. Yeah, no wonder the upcoming twist falls completely flat. Oh, but not the one coming right now. This game has like 4 plot twists and most of them fucking suck. Haruto hangs out with Ryo to cheer him up, and the motion of Haruto putting on his glasses triggers a memory of Sachika's killer doing the same thing. So that must mean they're the same person. Rinko seems to believe so too, and since they desperately want you to believe it too, we head into Stage 6, My Fair Lady. Oh, well, would you look at that? And it's only fitting we're playing as the fairest lady of them all, Rinko. Well, is that really a compliment when there's only 4 women left in the world? Anyway, the next machine part just unlocks the photo gallery, and the next ruins are going to unlock Rinko's past, as this time it's an hour-long back-to-school special! Kaio Academy, their old school, home to the final machine part. Kaio Academy is fun to explore and all, but this is when it really became more about being annoying for the sake of being annoying than anything else. And with a story that has been limping along for as long as this one has, it becomes really forgettable. What's not forgettable though, this area's conquest videos. So let's waste no more time and jump right into Lust Part 1, Diaries of a Middle School Girl. Okay, I never want to hear the words lust and middle school girl in the same sentence ever again. Quick warning, this is another disturbing one that may upset some people and hit too close to home. In fact, this is the one that I find to be the most upsetting. Probably because I imagine it happening to one of my children in the future and the killing spree I'd go on afterwards that would make John Wick blush and Jason Voorhees tell me to calm down. In this inaugural installment of the 6th season, Rinko is being bullied by 3 girls, and for some reason believes everyone will take the bully's side if she reports it to a teacher. Yes, because a teacher is way more likely to believe that a kid beat themselves up than they are to believe that they were bullied. It's like how you should handle bomb threats, just pretend it's a lie, what's the worst that could happen? Anyway, in order for them to stop bullying her, she agrees to frame her teacher as a pedophile. However, she doesn't want to go through with it and tells said teacher what they demanded. He says he'll stick up for her in exchange for being able to sexually assault her without her telling anyone. So either that teacher has a promising career at CNN or these kids went to school in Loudoun County, Virginia. And this is only part 1. As a brief moment of respite, I want to praise this area's color scheme. The pink hue cast over everything and how it contrasts with the bright orange sunlight shining through the windows creates a very nice look. Alright, now back to the horror with Lust Part 2. Okay, a bit better than middle school girl, but can we at least say she's 18? It'll make what's coming a tad less horrifying. Years later, rumors are spreading about Rinko sleeping with anyone who asks, including teachers, and her boyfriend breaks up with her after a photo leaks of her with the teacher from before. Desperate for protection and cast out of her family like she told them futures they didn't want to hear, she got with the next guy who asked her out, who broke up with her shortly afterwards because he was only there for the sex. And that's it for the Lust videos. Yep, there's only 2, and I still think it's the most unsettling one. I mean, it's another one where the people around the subject are more guilty of the sin than the subject themselves, but as someone who believes sexual crimes like the grape with the silent G or the Michael Jackson R. Kelly special are worse than murder, this one shocked me. Moving on to another shocking event, Haruto finds a scrapbook detailing Sachika's murder and how it was one in a string committed by the London Bridge Killer, named for the fact that he left a nursery rhyme at each crime scene. And wouldn't you know it, the photo of the apprehended killer, Yosuke Kurosaki, looks strikingly similar to Haruto. And while Rinko's videos are done, there are still more videos to be shown here, starting with the extra special Lust R10 Special Part 1, A Girl's Hell. All this shows is Rinko being saved from bullies by Sachika and 2 other members of the Garage Kids, which Rinko thinks to be Ryo and Mamoru. Lust R10 Special Part 2, A Girl's Heaven, shows Rinko being introduced to the rest of the Garage Kids and learning to stick up for herself. And seeing how these take place before the Lust tapes we saw, you can tell how long that confidence lasted. Also, this video is really what makes the whole Haruto red herring disintegrate. They all begin to believe he's the killer because he wasn't shown as a member of the Garage Kids, even though he clearly was. Everyone's hair color and or style in that video can clearly be tied to 7 of the 8 cast members, including Haruto. So there's clearly someone that sticks out more, but we'll let these idiots get there on their own. First, they have to beat the boss, but not before Haruto can prove how much of a G he is by comforting and encouraging Rinko even though she believes he's a murderer. The boss this time around is a mutated representation of Rinko at her worst, when she needed to rely on other people for everything. So we're in a high school, and one of the main party members has to confront the part of their personality they pretend doesn't exist as it takes a physical form. Am I suddenly reviewing Persona 4? I enjoy the atmosphere of this boss more than I enjoy the fight itself. You have to destroy a teleporting bust which will summon the boss whenever you get near it, which is a lot of fun in a very stressful way, but when it's defeated the fight just becomes tedious. There was even a bug where the boss just wouldn't die. They retrieve the final machine part, which supposedly will stop the aging effect, and are presented with the final video from Extend TV, which is called the final video. And this video is honestly the best moment in the game. Shame there's like 10 more fucking hours to ruin it. Yosuke Kurosaki finds the kids in the garage and forces them to play a game. They will each close their eyes and point at someone else, and whoever has the most people pointing at them will be murdered. We see Rinko's thought process and how she ends up choosing Sachika because she believes no one else will pick her, only to find out that everyone else had the exact same idea, while Sachika was the only one clever enough to point at Yosuke instead. The moment is so powerful and hard-hitting that the simplistic style in which it's conveyed doesn't ruin it at all. Anyway, Kurosuke shows up, Mamoru has a fucking mental breakdown out of nowhere again, and Kurosuke trounces on all of them until just Rinko and Haruto are left standing. Haruto promises to distract Kurosuke so that Rinko can escape with the rest of the X-Keys, prompting Rinko's memories to come back to her, and she sees that Haruto was a member of the Garage Kids, and the person who wasn't should have been glaringly obvious hours ago. Rinko revives everyone except Mamoru and reveals her suspicion to them. And let me just say this right now, Haruto is not Yosuke Kurosaki, and it's really fucking stupid that Yosuke just so happens to look exactly like adult Haruto. A more contrived red herring there never has been. Speaking of contrivances, they go to retrieve Haruto's X-Key only to find it broken. With no other option, they revive Mamoru and get him to confess. He wasn't a garage kid, he was a doctor at the school infirmary that would occasionally stop by. Glad that was set up at all. Mamoru says there's a way to revive Haruto, but it'll have to happen in Stage 7. And one for the little boy who lives down the lane. This is when the wheels fall off, where the game drastically dips in quality and starts crawling along, gushing blood and begging for anyone to put it out of its misery. Now we're playing from Mamoru's perspective as he tells the Garage Kids that there just so happens to be a spare X-Key at Hirosaka Memorial Hospital, where Sachika, the first human clone, used to live and Mamoru used to work. He then reveals that Garage Island isn't an island, it's a fucking boat! Hey T-Pain, you still there? Thanks again! Mamoru has been controlling Garage Island and bringing it to these ruins, then connecting them to the boat so they travel with them, despite the fact that islands don't work that way! The next big pile of shit this game tries to serve up is the hospital itself. It's boring, overdone, and ridiculously annoying. And since no extended TV episodes were made for Sachika or Mamoru, the only story progression is Mamoru's shitty plan. He made them all human clones because he wanted them to remember that they killed Sachika since it was wiped from their memories, and also set up the conquest videos to remind them that they were sinners, with the 7 deadly sins illusion being just for funsies. So, in wanting them to remember their original sin, he showed them their past trauma, and if he's doing all this for Sachika, why is he working with Kurosuke? It should be pretty obvious by now that Kurosuke is just a composite of Kurosaki and Yosuke. What makes it worse is that Sachika is Mamoru's sister! Well, half-sister, and the next contrivance comes in the form of both Mamoru and Sachika taking their mother's last names instead of the father they share. Why not just have them share a mother if you want their last names to be different? One aspect of this I like is how they're a complementary pair. Mamoru is the average child of 2 geniuses, thus seen as a disappointment. Sachika is the genius child of 2 geniuses, thus seen as nothing more than her brain. I think it's sweet how they both bond over wanting to feel loved, though it's ruined by modern Mamoru constantly being cold to Sachika and only referring to her as clone Sachika. I get that her personality is different than the original, but she's still your sister, dude. But there's another aspect I like. I like how guilty Mamoru feels over failing to protect Sachika, and now he goes so far as to steal her corpse and put it in cryosleep so he can dedicate his life to studying science and finding a way to revive her. There's a real supervillain origin story right there. It is then ruined with the arrival of Daichi Terashima, that assistant guy from the Belle et Moi footage, and Mamoru and Sachika's father. He's just the worst, though he introduces Mamoru to clone Sachika before telling him he plans on killing her since it lacks Sachika's personality and brain. Mamoru then takes clone Sachika in after exchanging Sachika's body for a spot on the research team. We also find out what Luciora is. It's a nanomachine. In fact, those shining lights every time someone dies, is revived, or summons a Cleone are Luciora nanomachines activating. And then it's time for the next contrivance. Sachika's X-Key is different from everyone else's because it's an earlier model, the newer ones having a limiter for privacy reasons, though I don't know who the fuck would buy something that kills them every 13 days over something that, I don't know, doesn't? Daichi already knows no one wants that shit, so he tasks Mamoru with kidnapping people to test it on. And since he just so happened to be using Yosuke for a different experiment, he somehow got all the names of the Garage Kids. I don't know how the fuck Yosuke knew that, but whatever. Mamoru then just so happens to kidnap all of them right at their lowest point, and the world just so happens to end right after they were given the X-Keys. Speaking of the end of the world, it happened when Luciora began self-replicating way faster than intended, leaking out and infecting humanity with Cleone. So everyone was either turned into a tentacle monster or killed in their wake. So Mamoru blamed the garage kids for the end of the world because the world ended as a result of humans being turned into clone thanks to a malfunction in a branch of cloning research that was started because of Sachika's death, which came at the hands of the garage kids because a serial killer forced them to point at somebody. Doesn't sound like a stretch at all. And with time enough at last, he spent years training himself and finding all of the wreckage for this game. This brings them into the room that Mamoru had used to revive himself all those years, now being guarded by Kurosuke, the heavily mutated living human Cleone Yosuke Kurosaki. And oh man, this fight is rough. Thanks in no small part to the absurd amount of Cleone enhancements Kurosuke has and the random rocks scattered on the floor that make you drop a random item. However, it's a satisfying final boss. He's been hunting the garage kids for so long now, and he's the reason all of this happened. With Kurosuke down, Sachika's memories come flooding back to her and she becomes her old self, which is enough to stop Mamoru from destroying the spare X key. They revive Haruto and Mamoru informs him that there is no way to remove the limiter, and that it was all just a lie, though Sachika still wants everyone to forgive him. I mean, sure, but he's still the worst main character in the game. I do like the moment after they forgive him where he expresses that he never hated clone Sachika, he just hated the idea of moving on from and forgetting the original. It's immediately undermined when he admits to having a sister complex, though. I'm noticing a pattern here. Also, since the humanity counter on the extend machine is 8 and there's no way to reverse the aging effect, humanity is basically fucked. What a happy ending! Wait, what? Oh, no, come on! There's one final area to explore, the Mashiru Nanotechnology Institute, aka MANI, and it's a doozy. Also the drizzling shits. It's a very annoying and repetitive area that is way too big with only the most frayed thread of a story to propel it forward. See, after they unlock a door, Sachika's metallic arm is revealed to be the real villain all along. You heard that right, her arm. It's a final boss. Alright, so there's a bit more to it. Her arm is actually her dad, Daichi Terashima, the guy who died underwater in Mani while Sachika was in the hospital. And Sachika never got her memories back. It was just Daichi fucking with them. Speaking of Daichi fucking with them, he reboots Extend TV for one final season called Shin Extend TV. And Mirai summarizes my thoughts the second I started this video.
Wow, we just started and I already feel like dying.
And the main difference, aside from being in living color, is a new host. Daichi explains that he has a special X key. It's the joystick looking thing on Sachika's arm. They also find out that Daichi was the one that kickstarted the end of the world, though the outbreak was only supposed to be inside Mani. He believes that there's a bug in the human system and that the future of humanity is as Cleone. Anyway, they beat the fuck out of Extended Terashima and he kills Sachika as he goes out, destroying her X key in the process. However, Extend Machine Unit 1 activates and produces a real human baby that grows up to be Sachika. 5 years later, and the Extend Machine has stopped working, so all the clones die, leaving just Sachika. However, Haruto has a realization right at the end. Just like how you still have one life left in a video game when the counter is at 0, the Extend Machine's life counter being at 1 means there's someone else out there, and Sachika ends up finding them. You know, because it's not like Earth is a big place. And it's a good thing he happens to be both young and a human male. Oh yeah, and f*** this ending. If Sachika was reborn as a human so easily, why didn't they try it with everyone else? Oh, but fuck it, we're done. This game started at a certain point and then only went down in quality from there. There are way too many gameplay elements, the game itself feels too long, the dungeons are nowhere near as enjoyable as they should be for this type of game, and the best parts are the conquest videos and they're only good like half the time. And for fun, since I need some fun, I'll rank the characters, starting at the bottom. Mamoru has to be one of the worst twist villains ever. He doesn't do a single fucking thing through the whole game, then he's evil for like an hour, and then we're back like nothing happened. I liked the story behind Sachika more than I liked her character. She got annoying very often. Ryo is the most forgettable garage kid. His backstory is messed up and the bondage thing is weird, but he never really stood out to me. Minamo is fine. A lot of her interactions boil down to police comedy, which gets kind of tiring. Also, I hate the trope of fan service characters being given no personality because boobs equals personality. This isn't high school. Yuma surprised me the most. For a character who spends most of the time talking about how much she likes to eat, there were so many little quirks about her that made me like her more than I expected. Zen, like I said earlier, had the biggest turnaround. There were times after his section where I felt like he was being too much of a dick, but I could always understand where he was coming from and that he really cared about everyone in his own way. Rinko was just a sweet girl who clearly cared about everyone and wanted them all to be strong. Even when she was captain of the Haruto hate team, she didn't want to be. Plus, her loyalty to Haruto after the fact was nice. And Haruto is obviously the best. He leads the Garage Kids well and stays strong through all adversity, even helping and offering support and advice to those who think he murdered one of his friends. The final score for Zanki Zero Last Beginning is a 4 out of 10. There are good moments and good sections with a couple solid characters, but it just feels too bloated. Like you could tell it was an old idea that they just kept adding more and more to it until they lost sight of what the game's core was. Plus, both of the twist villains are god-awful, and the final, third or fourth of this game is a challenge to get through in all the wrong ways. Finally, fuck that shitty-ass ending. And you know what? After 2 games in a row about a club being faced with the end of the world, I want my own World's End Club. I hope to see you there.
Continue.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.